When you're ready.
Should animals be used for biomedical research? Getting straight to the point, my answer to this question is yes. Animals should be used for biomedical research purposes, but only if severe harm towards these animals is as minimized as possible and until a better replacement solution is found. Next, I'm going to be articulating my response to this question by breaking it up into two different parts, both covering two different lenses, those respectively being the ethical and scientific. The first one out of those being discussed is the ethical point of view of things, specifically looking at some of the reasons why these experiments may be frowned upon in the first place. Looking at those reasons, we begin with the infringement of animal rights. Having animal rights refers to the idea that animals have the fundamental rights to be treated with respect and without torture, something that immediately becomes disrespected the moment an animal is lined up to become a part of some experiment. Another argument that is brought up is the pain and suffering being caused at the expense of these animals. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, animal pain is described as a very unpleasant sensory and emotional experience, which is something that I don't think anyone wants to go through themselves. Animals essentially feel pain the same way that humans do, likely due to the similar genetic makeup, so it wouldn't make sense to do something to an animal that you wouldn't dare do to a human. An example of this is the toxicity test known as the Dre's test, where the substance being tested is injected into the eye of an animal, most likely a bunny, as observations are made. In the end, the animal is almost always severely damaged or killed, calling for further action to be taken and providing safer ways for certain animals to be tested on, if even tested at all. And here in the picture right here, you can see the setup for that test. Switching lenses, we're next going to be talking about the scientific lens, more specifically the different ways that animal experimentation may be beneficial for society in general. For starters, mice and rats make up approximately almost 95% of animals used in lab experiments, which carries over to my next set of points, beginning with the similarities between these mice and humans. Mice and humans evidently share more than 98% of DNA, which is actually very helpful during research processes. Since humans are so genetically similar, they also are susceptible to the same diseases as we are, such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. These relations make any findings that much more important, as accurate tests can be run to help better research overall. Mice also have a significantly shorter lifespan than humans, which allows researchers to study the entire life cycle of these animals in a shorter amount of time, something that is very critical and important in understanding exactly how a disease processes and reacts in a living organism. Lastly, there's a new concept being introduced called the 3 R's, those respectively being replacement, reduction, and refinement. Consequently, all of these components are being used in collaboration to help come up with more efficient and safer ways to use animals for experimentation. Next, I analyzed the relationship between these mice and cancer research, specifically looking at data from the Institute of Cancer Research. Looking at some of these procedures conducted, one of them is the implementation of tumor cells into these mice, who to some degree actually mimic the way a human would react to these tumors. As a result of injecting the mice with these cells, scientists look at the growth and characteristics of these respective tumors, while also testing whether certain drugs have any impact in shrinking or slowing these tumors down. Lastly, the Institute states that mice can easily be genetically altered to study some of the specific genetic causes behind this cancer. For example, these genetically engineered mice were used in experiments regarding cancer in children and that effect that it has on their brain and nervous system. And that data panned out to actually be very successful in finding treatments for child cancer patients. And this data right here is the amounts of mice and rats that they use. They use mice way more than they do use rats, but you can see that there's a trend downwards of the amounts of mice that they're using. To conclude, the use of animals in research is very substantial to the betterment of human life as we know it. While some of the ethics behind it may be a little bit foggy at times, the implementation of safer and more necessary practices is something that is steadily improving right in front of our eyes. While something more efficient is desired, what we have right now is something that we can use responsibly, and it'll help create more groundbreaking effects for our society as a whole.
Okay. Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the process?
That was actually something that I was kind of struggling with at the beginning. I really wanted to say no at first just because there's so much controversy around the ethics involving the topic, but then I was just testing out the different lenses to see which ones I think I could get the most out of, and then I looked at the scientific lens, and I started to see just how much some of these tests actually help research and stuff like that. So I guess I just looked for the most information possible to find out the best way I could present it.
Okay, thank you. What advice would you have for other researchers who are going to consider this topic?
Like I just said before, I would advise that you just look at as much information as you can just so you can gather up and create your own articulation to how you want to present that information, because the more information that you have to talk about, the more that's better.
Okay, thank you.